It was just another typical Saturday afternoon. I had spent hours fiddling around in the garage trying to fix my bike. Now at 20, I was living with my dad after he remarried Samantha, a woman nearly 3 times my age. Samantha, who is 60, defies her years with a vitality and elegance that's hard to overlook. Little did I know that this day would turn out to be anything but ordinary. As I tightened the last bolt, I heard the creak of the door connecting the house to the garage. I barely acknowledged it, assuming it was just Dad checking in on me. But then I heard her voice, soft yet commanding. "Hey, you've been spending a lot of time in here," Samantha remarked as she entered the garage. I looked up to see her framed in the doorway, wearing a light dress that hugged her curves in a way that was impossible to ignore. Her blonde hair was impeccably styled as always, but it was her eyes that caught me off guard. They seemed playful, almost mischievous. "Just wrapping up with the bike," I replied, using my arm to wipe the sweat from my forehead. I tried not to gawk, yet something about her presence was captivating. "You know," she said, stepping closer, her heels clicking rhythmically against the concrete. "I don't usually come down to the garage, but I was curious about what you were doing." I let out a nervous laugh. "Not much to see here, just tools and grease." She smiled, a warm expression that always lit up the room, but today it felt more charged. Leaning against the workbench a few feet from me, she said, "You've been working so hard lately. Don't you think you deserve a break?" Her words lingered in the air, making the garage feel increasingly confining. I felt her gaze on me, and for the first time I didn't just see her as my dad's wife. There was something more happening, something I couldn't quite define. "Maybe," I muttered, attempting to keep my voice steady as I turned back to the bike, pretending to fiddle with a bolt that didn't need any adjustments. "You don't have to be shy around me, you know," she said, her tone softening. I felt her hand on my shoulder and froze. Her touch was light, almost tentative, yet it sent a shiver down my spine. "You've grown up so much," she whispered, her fingers trailing down my arm. I swallowed hard, my heart racing. "Samantha, She stepped closer, her body brushing against mine. "It's okay." Her hand moved to my neck, and before I could respond, she leaned in and kissed me. It started soft but quickly deepened, her lips warm and demanding. I was at a loss, unable to process what was unfolding. All I knew was that I didn't want to pull away. Her hands found their way to my chest, slipping under my shirt as her fingers traced my muscles. It felt like a dream, and a part of me wished it would never end. "Look, Samantha, we shouldn't," I whispered against her lips, but she simply smiled, her green eyes locked onto mine. "Why not?" she teased. "Your dad's out for the day, and it's just the two of us." Her fingers played with the hem of my shirt before she pulled it off over my head. I was breathless, swept up in a whirlwind of emotions that I couldn't comprehend. But her touch and her kisses were intoxicating. She pushed me back against the workbench, her lips trailing down my neck, her hands exploring my body with a confidence that rendered me powerless. "We've got plenty of time," she murmured as her lips met mine once more, her kiss becoming more urgent. I had no idea how we had arrived at this moment or how things had escalated so quickly. But in that instant, none of it mattered. It was just the two of us, the outside world fading away as the tension between us intensified with every touch and kiss. Her lips pressed against mine, soft yet insistent, suggesting we had both crossed an invisible boundary that couldn't be undone. The garage felt as if it was closing in on us, the air thick with anticipation. Her hands roamed my chest, her fingers tracing every muscle as if she had been waiting for this moment. I could feel the heat building between us, a magnetic pull that was impossible to resist. "I can't resist, Samantha," I whispered again, this time without hesitation. She looked up at me, her eyes reflecting a desire I had never seen before. Pure and undeniable. Moving closer, she pressed her body against mine, and I felt her warmth through the thin fabric of her dress. Every touch of hers sent my pulse racing faster. Every brush of her skin against mine ignited a craving for more. It wasn't just the physical closeness. It was the electric tension in the air. An unspoken bond between us that had always existed, but was now undeniable. "I've seen the way you look at me," she whispered, her lips grazing my ear. "Don't think I haven't noticed." I swallowed hard, feeling my heart pound in my chest. She was right. I had tried to ignore it, suppress those thoughts, but now it was clear. I had been drawn to her for months, perhaps since the day she moved in, but I had never allowed myself to admit it until now. Her hand slid lower, and I shivered at her touch, feeling the cool air on my skin as she slowly peeled off my shirt. She took her time, savoring every second as if she were unwrapping a long-awaited gift. And maybe, in a sense, she had been. "You don't have to hold back," she whispered, her lips brushing against my neck and sending shivers racing down my spine. "I know you've wanted this just as much as I have." I found myself speechless, unable to think clearly. All I could do was respond instinctively. My hands found their way to her waist, pulling her closer to me. She wore a knowing smile, one that suggested she had been waiting for me to make the first move. With her fingers tangled in my hair, she kissed me again. This time deeper, more passionate. Outside the garage, the world faded away, leaving just the two of us enveloped in the moment. Her dress slipped off her shoulders, exposing her smooth skin, and I was captivated by every inch of her. The age difference between us felt almost electric, heightening the intensity of what we were doing. I knew it was wrong, yet I couldn't bring myself to stop. In fact, I didn't want to stop at all. She guided me to the old couch in the corner of the garage, the very one I used to sit on when I needed to think. Now it became the backdrop for something entirely different. As she sank down, pulling me with her, her gaze remained fixed on mine. "This stays between us," she murmured, her lips just inches from my own. "No one needs to know. It's just you and me." I nodded, my heart racing as I leaned in for another kiss. Our bodies pressed together, creating a sensation that felt both forbidden and undeniably right. Each kiss, every touch, ignited a fire within us, and the more we surrendered to it, the harder it became to pull away. We remained intertwined, lost in the moment, as if time had come to a standstill. Nothing else mattered, neither my dad nor the potential consequences. All that existed was the way her body moved against mine, and the way she whispered my name. But gradually reality started to creep back in. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway jolted us from our reverie, and we sprang apart. Our breaths were ragged, our bodies still trembling from the intensity of what had just occurred. "Your dad's home," she said breathlessly, quickly readjusting her dress and smoothing it down as if nothing had happened. I grabbed my shirt, pulling it back on, my mind racing. Samantha turned to me, her expression serious, yet there was still a spark of mischief in her eyes. "Remember? No one can ever know about this," she whispered. I nodded, still trying to catch my breath and process everything that had just unfolded. As she opened the door to the house, she paused, glancing back at me with a smile that sent another shiver down my spine. "We'll talk later," she said softly before slipping inside, leaving me alone in the garage with my thoughts and the memory of her touch. I lingered there for a moment longer, my heart still pounding, bewildered by how everything had shifted so rapidly. I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart heavy with everything that had just transpired. Before Samantha could fully exit, she paused again, her hand resting on the doorknob as if caught in a battle with herself. Slowly, she turned back to face me. Her expression softened, and instead of the finality I had sensed moments ago, there was a glimmer of something hopeful. "Look," she began, her voice now tender. "I meant what I said about this being complicated, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't prepared to feel this way." She stepped closer, sitting down beside me on the bed, our proximity feeling more intimate. "I've been fighting it too, trying to ignore it." I searched her face, desperate for understanding. "Then why does it have to end like this?" A small smile crept across her face, her eyes twinkling with something lighter, softer. "Maybe it doesn't," she whispered. "Perhaps it's not about what can't happen, but rather what we need to figure out together." A moment of silence enveloped us as we both absorbed the shift in the conversation. The tension that had been so palpable began to dissolve, replaced by something more genuine, more honest. Samantha gently reached out, taking my hand in hers. "I don't want to lose whatever this is between us," she said softly. "But we have to be careful. We need to take it slow. I don't want to hurt anyone, especially not your dad. But I also can't pretend this didn't happen," she added. My heart soared at the thought that maybe it didn't have to be all or nothing. Perhaps there was a way for us to explore our feelings without it signaling the end of everything. "So what do we do?" I asked cautiously, a glimmer of hope in my voice. She smiled that warm, inviting smile of hers and squeezed my hand. We take our time. We figure it out together. No rushing into anything. No more hiding from our feelings. But for now, we keep this between us until we know what we're doing. It wasn't perfect, but it was more than I had hoped for. There was no need for shame or regret. There was potential. Something that could gradually evolve into whatever we both desired it to be. Then Samantha leaned in again, and this time when she kissed me, it wasn't filled with urgency or guilt. It was soft, tender, infused with the promise of something new. An unexpected future that we could explore together. She pulled back slightly, her eyes locking onto mine with a quiet intensity. "We'll figure it out," she whispered. And in that moment I knew she was right. We had time, and more importantly, we had a connection, a chance to make this work however long it might take. The heaviness that had enveloped me earlier lifted, replaced by a sense of lightness and possibility. As we sat there side by side, the room felt a little brighter, the weight of secrecy and guilt giving way to hope for what lay ahead. This was just the beginning.